In channel trade, light bulb says life's not gonna get better, is it? End of line. In channel trade, Brand says, a wise man once told me, life will get better, just not for you. End of line. In channel trade, GTZIWT says, it actually gets worse. End of line. In channel trade, Mia Sophie says, I imagine it gets better if we stop expecting JST good things. End of line. In channel trade, Skazo says, what? End of line. In channel trade, Lightbulb says, I expect a bitter little twat with a grudge to fuck me over for the rest of my life. TBH. End of line. In channel trade, Brand says, it may not get better, but our actions can make it more bearable. End of line. In channel trade, Skazo says, wait, what is going on, lol? End of line. In channel trade, Lightbulb says, if you don't already know, you sure as shit don't want to. End of line. In channel trade, Ramen530 says, you mom day. End of line. In channel trade, Gilgamesh says, what is happening? End of line. In channel trade, Skazo says, you game on. End of line. In channel trade, Brindaman says, people reading Pornhub comments again. EHH. End of line.
I need time to do that. I need time to do that.
In channel trade, Lightbulb says, just fucking around in trade. TBH. IDK anything about anything. End of line. In channel trade, Skazo says, I was gay for Halloween, what was everyone else? End of line. In channel trade, Ramen530 says, I was your mom. End of line. In channel trade, Lightbulb says, I was indoors. End of line.
I need time to do that.
In channel trade, pure insanity says, I was Will Mdickfit, end of line.
Yes, are we back?
In channel trade, Ramen 530 says, I was don't care, end of line. In channel trade, Skazo says, I was Ramen 530 for Halloween, everyone was creeped out, end of line. In channel trade, Pure Insanity says, LMAO, end of line. In channel trade, Brindaman says, UWWW, end of line. In channel trade, KRIMBOZDTV says, anyone want free version loop, end of line. In channel trade, Lightbulb says, damn, just randomly throwing shade, SMH, end of line. In channel trade, Pure Insanity says, it's all love here, end of line. In channel trade, Skazo says, bing bong, end of line.
Father lied. He never once had the courage to face me. Father lied.
In channel trade, Ramen 530 says, I'd rather throw your mom into the shade, end of line. In channel trade, Rizel says, free Varsh, end of line. In channel trade, Lightbulb says, weird associations bro, end of line. In channel trade, KRIMBOZDTV says, LF1M free version loop during up or unique type V, end of line.
Not bad. Come back if you need work.
You have good time.
In channel trade, Big Daddy Wolf says, Oko Deathblow incoming, end of line. In channel trade, Ramen 530 says, almost fell asleep playing after a 12 HR shift, end of line. In channel trade, Lightbulb says, what you do for 12 hours, end of line. In channel trade, Blat says, ING, end of line. In channel trade, Ramen 530 says, you non, end of line. In channel trade, Pure Insanity says, soft hands brother, end of line. In channel trade, KRIMBOZDTV says, LF1M free version last call type ING, end of line. In channel trade, Stykes says, Carrot hardworker, end of line. In channel trade, Lightbulb says, I don't know why I didn't expect that, but I really didn't expect that, end of line. In channel trade, Skazo says, I love trampling with overpower locked and loaded, end of line. In channel trade, Skazo says, zombies turn to vapor, end of line.
Ivo, look at me. Demon! A blood-soaked horror! There! Damn, he...
In channel trade, Lightbulb says, party at the world boss, end of line. In channel trade, Tasmus says, I love something too, end of line. In channel trade, Tasmus says, item link, the grandfather, end of line.
I need time to do that.
In channel trade, Skazo says, does it never come with ranges, end of line. In channel trade, Lightbulb says, they changed uniques so they're all max rolls now, end of line. In channel trade, Pure Insanity says, Moose I hope you stub your toe on a table, end of line. In channel trade, Skazo says, it just always has perfect rolls, / end of line. In channel trade, Lightbulb says, Uber uniques do, end of line.
Oh Diablo nice.
In channel trade, Ramen530 says, I'm just fooling in chat to keep myself awake. I have text to speech on for this chat. It's funny to hear it speak out the random convos, end of line. In channel trade, Skazo says, how do you get text to speech on trade chat? That sounds hilarious, end of line. In channel trade, Ramen530 says, it's sing bomb feature in the options, end of line. In channel trade, Lightbulb says, goo goo gaga pee pee popo fuck the police. No wait, I take it back, don't shoot me, I'm in knock, end of line. In channel trade, Skazo says, hold up, end of line. In channel trade, Brand says, Alexa, order laundry detergent from Amazon.com, end of line. In channel trade, Lightbulb says, Alexa order mom, end of line. In channel trade, Skazo says, Alexa, download Linux and install. Please overwrite my current operating system. Also, delete Diablo 4, end of line. In channel trade, Lightbulb says, Alexa, please delete System 32, end of line.
I need more time.
In channel trade, North says, thank you for telling me about text to speech. I'm high af and was getting tired, end of line. In channel trade, John Worth says, Nicker, end of line. In channel trade, Skazo says, Alexa, activate voice assisted typing, press and hold Ctrl, Alt, and delete at the same time, end of line. In channel trade, Ramen530 says, lol have fun, end of line.
I need more time. I need time to do that.
No, we won't forsake you.
I need more time.
Careful. This situation is delicate.
In channel trade, Lightbulb says, what even is this? End of line.
Take much?
Vasek, just stay calm. Will you settle it on his with me? Everything is going to be alright.
In channel trade, Lightbulb says, oh my god, it reads my shit back to me. That's so weird. End of line. In channel trade, Skazo says, Ramen 530, what have you done? I should have never known this existed. End of line. In channel trade, Ramen 530 says, LMAO. End of line. In channel trade, Ramen 530 says, especially because the voice is somehow worse than Microsoft Sam. End of line. In channel trade, Skazo says, dude, why don't they get the celebrity voice actors to narrate the trade chat? End of line.
Vasek, I've failed you. I'm so sorry.
We need to
In channel trade, Ramen 530 says, like Blizzard can't even implement new technologies from my voice. End of line. In channel trade, Skazo says, I want to know what item link Rawmite Dread Mace will sound like. Tell me what it is, female Diablo for narrator. End of line. In channel trade, Skazo says, I want it to read all of the stats to me. End of line. In channel trade, Lightbulb says, I wonder what it does with Chinese characters. End of line. In channel trade, Skazo says, plus DG85B plus hash. End of line. In channel trade, Lightbulb says, well, if it doesn't know how to pronounce accented English characters, it's probably not gonna get Chinese. End of line. In channel trade, Ramen 530 says, is that Chinese text? I just see gibberish. End of line. In channel trade, Brand says, that was just random symbols. End of line. In channel trade, Skazo says, alert, alert, all cuties report to duty, alert, alert. End of line. In channel trade, North says, now the true text, how does it say GIF? End of line. In channel trade, Lightbulb says, this is acceptable. End of line. In channel trade, North says, this is the way. End of line. In channel trade, Lightbulb says, because it's not a goddamn peanut butter. End of line. In channel trade, Lightbulb says, so now we just start fucking with the bot, right? End of line, end of line. In channel trade, Brand says, end of line. In channel trade, North says, I turned that off and was like, what the fuck? End of line. In channel trade, Brand says, probably won't read that either. End of line.
I cannot salvage that.
Another time, babe.
In channel trade, Lightbulb says, in channel trade, Brand says, end of line, probably won't read this either. End of line, LMAO, just kidding, no really, end of line.
Not while I'm in town.
In channel trade, Brand says, end of line.
I can't do that here.